When a racist cop harassed a pregnant black woman during a routine stop, he thought his abuse of power would go unnoticed. What he didn't expect was her husband's brilliant and calculated revenge that would leave him humiliated and facing the consequences of his actions. This isn't just a story about one couple's fight for justice. It's a powerful lesson about standing up to prejudice, protecting loved ones, and holding those in power accountable. What happens next will leave you stunned and inspired. Stay tuned to see how this incredible story unfolds. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more impactful stories that challenge injustice and inspire action. The day started like any other for Jasmine Turner, a 32-year-old expectant mother in her third trimester. Jasmine was the kind of person who radiated warmth and resilience. Despite the challenges of pregnancy, she maintained her independence and her routine, often running errands herself, while her husband, Marcus, worked from home as a successful attorney. Jasmine was deeply excited about the new chapter in their lives, preparing their home and hearts for the arrival of their first child. That morning, Jasmine headed out to the grocery store in their suburban neighborhood. The streets were quiet, with only a few cars passing by as she drove carefully. Her mind was on her shopping list and the baby items she still needed to pick up. Everything seemed normal until she noticed the flashing lights of a police cruiser in her rearview mirror. Officer Daniels, the officer who pulled her over, was notorious in the community for his aggressive demeanor and questionable behavior. Daniels, a man in his late 40s with a harsh tone and an intimidating presence, had built a reputation for targeting certain individuals, particularly those who didn't look like they belonged in the neighborhood. As Jasmine pulled over, she felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her chest. She had done nothing wrong, but she knew the stories about Officer Daniels all too well. She rolled down her window and greeted him politely, trying to keep her voice calm. "Good morning, officer. Is there a problem?" she asked. Daniels leaned in with a scowl, his hand resting on his belt. "License and registration," he barked, ignoring her question. His tone was laced with suspicion, and he eyed her car and her belly with a condescending smirk. Jasmine complied, handing over the documents. "Can you tell me why I'm being stopped?" she asked again, her voice steady but firm. Daniels ignored her once more, taking his time inspecting her paperwork. "What's someone like you doing in this neighborhood?" he asked, his tone dripping with disdain. The question stung, but Jasmine remained composed. "I live here," she replied, her voice unwavering. "Just running errands." Daniels chuckled dryly. "Sure you do," he said, his words thick with sarcasm. "Step out of the car." Jasmine hesitated, placing her hands on her belly instinctively. "Officer, I'm pregnant," she said. "I've complied with your requests. Is there a reason I need to step out of the car?" His smirk vanished, replaced with a hard glare. "Are you refusing to cooperate?" he snapped, his voice louder now. The tension in the air was palpable, and Jasmine felt a pang of fear as she realized how quickly the situation was escalating. At home, Marcus was wrapping up a call when he noticed his phone buzzing repeatedly. Jasmine had managed to text him a quick message explaining what was happening. As soon as he read it, his pulse quickened. Marcus knew Jasmine was strong and capable, but he also knew how dangerous someone like Officer Daniels could be. Without wasting a moment, Marcus grabbed his car keys and headed toward Jasmine's location. He was determined to stand by her side and ensure her safety. But as an attorney with years of experience handling civil rights cases, Marcus wasn't just thinking about protecting his wife. He was already planning how to hold Daniels accountable for his actions. As Jasmine sat in her car, tension mounting, Officer Daniels' demands became increasingly aggressive. "Step out of the vehicle now!" he barked, his hand hovering near his holstered weapon. Jasmine, trying to remain calm, unbuckled her seatbelt slowly, her visibly pregnant belly making her movements deliberate. "Officer, I've complied with everything you've asked," Jasmine said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "Is there a specific reason for this treatment?" Daniels didn't respond. Instead, he opened her car door, causing Jasmine to flinch. The situation had escalated far beyond what was reasonable, and the onlookers who had started to gather nearby murmured in concern. One bystander discreetly began recording the encounter on their phone, sensing that the situation could spiral further. As Jasmine carefully exited the vehicle, leaning on the car for support, Daniels continued his interrogation. "This car doesn't seem like it belongs to someone like you," he sneered. "Are you sure it's yours?" Jasmine's jaw tightened. She met his gaze and said firmly, "I've already provided my license and registration, which clearly prove that this car is mine. You have no right to treat me this way." Her composure only seemed to aggravate him further. "Don't tell me how to do my job," Daniels snapped. "Maybe you should focus on staying out of trouble instead." Just as Daniels' tone reached its most threatening, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the scene. Marcus stepped out, his tall frame exuding both confidence and quiet fury. Dressed sharply in business attire, Marcus looked every bit the accomplished attorney he was. His eyes scanned the scene, landing on Jasmine first, who gave him a small nod of reassurance despite the clear distress on her face. "Officer," Marcus said, his voice calm but with an unmistakable edge, "is there a problem here?" Daniels turned, his scowl deepening. "And who are you?" he demanded. "I'm her husband," Marcus replied, his tone firm, "and I'd like to know why you're harassing my pregnant wife." Daniels scoffed. "She was acting suspiciously. I'm just doing my job." Marcus stepped closer, his presence commanding. "Suspiciously? Driving her own car in her own neighborhood. That's what you call suspicious?" His voice grew sharper, cutting through the tension. "Or is it because of her skin color that you decided she didn't belong?" Daniels bristled, but before he could respond, Marcus held up his phone. "I've recorded everything since I arrived, and judging by the crowd and the camera phones pointed at you, I'm not the only one documenting this." Daniels faltered for the first time, his confidence visibly shaken. Marcus didn't stop there. "Officer, let me introduce myself. I'm Marcus Turner, a civil rights attorney. I've spent my career holding people like you accountable for abusing their authority. And right now, you're giving me a perfect example to add to my casework." Jasmine watched as the power dynamic shifted entirely. Daniels, who had been so domineering moments earlier, now seemed uncertain and defensive. "I didn't do anything wrong," he muttered, his earlier bravado gone. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "We'll let the footage and the law decide that," he said coolly. "And since you've unlawfully detained my wife without cause, you can expect to hear from my office very soon." Daniels glanced around, realizing that the gathered crowd was fully against him. The murmurs grew louder, with people openly criticizing his behavior. "This is unacceptable," one bystander said. "She didn't do anything wrong." The officer took a step back, clearly rattled. "You can go," he said gruffly, avoiding eye contact with Marcus or Jasmine. "Just leave." Jasmine, though shaken, refused to let the moment pass without speaking up. "Officer Daniels," she said, her voice strong, "you owe me an apology. Not just for me, but for every person you've treated unfairly because of your assumptions." The crowd nodded in agreement, their phones still recording. Daniels hesitated, then muttered, "I'm sorry." Marcus placed a supportive hand on Jasmine's shoulder. "We'll make sure he's held accountable," he whispered to her. "This isn't over." Jasmine nodded, drawing strength from her husband's presence and the solidarity of the bystanders who had come to her defense. As Officer Daniels retreated to his cruiser, trying to escape the scrutiny of the crowd, Marcus stepped forward, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Not so fast, Officer Daniels," he called out. The crowd hushed, their eyes fixed on Marcus as he approached the officer's car. Daniels paused, his hand on the car door, reluctant to face further confrontation. "You don't get to walk away from this," Marcus continued, his tone calm but commanding. "You harassed a pregnant woman, my wife, without cause. You've abused your authority, and you need to be held accountable for your actions." Daniels turned, his face a mix of frustration and fear. "I said she could leave," he muttered. "What more do you want?" Marcus took a step closer, meeting Daniels' gaze directly. "What I want," he said, his voice sharp, "is for you to understand the gravity of what you've done. This isn't about letting her leave. It's about the systemic abuse of power you've shown today." The tension in the air was palpable as Marcus pulled out a sleek leather folder from his car. Inside was a printed statement of Jasmine's rights, along with information about racial profiling cases Marcus had handled in the past. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus said, holding the folder up for Daniels to see. "I've documented this entire interaction, and so have multiple witnesses here." Marcus gestured to the crowd, which was still recording the scene on their phones. "This isn't just about today," he continued. "It's about every person you've ever treated unfairly because of your prejudice. And now, the evidence will speak for itself." Daniels, visibly shaken, tried to defend himself. "I didn't mean to offend anyone," he said weakly. "I was just doing my job." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Doing your job? Tell me, officer, which part of your job involves interrogating a pregnant woman without cause? Which part of your job involves questioning whether she belongs in her own neighborhood?" Daniels had no answer. His silence spoke volumes, and the crowd murmured in agreement with Marcus's words. At that moment, Marcus reached for his phone and dialed a number. "I've just called your precinct," he informed Daniels. "Your supervisor will be here shortly to address this situation. If you think you can brush this under the rug, you're mistaken." Daniels paled, his confidence completely shattered. He had underestimated the couple, particularly Marcus's resolve and his expertise in holding law enforcement accountable. Marcus turned to Jasmine, his voice softening. "Are you okay?" he asked, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Jasmine nodded, drawing strength from her husband's presence. "I'm okay," she said, though her voice carried the weight of the ordeal. "But I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." Marcus nodded, his expression firm. "We'll make sure of that." Minutes later, a second police cruiser pulled up. Out stepped Lieutenant Carter, a senior officer known for her no-nonsense approach. She walked briskly to the scene, her sharp eyes assessing the crowd, Marcus, and the visibly uncomfortable Daniels. "Mr. Turner, I received your call," Carter said, her tone professional. "What seems to be the issue here?" Marcus wasted no time, recounting the events with precision. He described how Daniels had stopped Jasmine without cause, escalated the situation unnecessarily, and subjected her to blatant harassment. "This is not just a matter of poor judgment," Marcus concluded. "It's a clear case of racial profiling and abuse of authority." Carter turned to Daniels, her expression hardening. "Officer Daniels, is this true?" she asked sharply. Daniels stammered, I didn't mean anything by it. I thought she might be a threat." Carter cut him off. "A threat? A pregnant woman running errands? Officer Daniels, your actions are inexcusable. Hand over your badge and firearm immediately. You're suspended pending a full investigation." The crowd erupted in murmurs of approval, as Daniels reluctantly complied, his face red with humiliation. Carter turned back to Marcus and Jasmine. "On behalf of the department, I sincerely apologize for this incident," she said. "We'll ensure a thorough review is conducted, and Officer Daniels will face the appropriate consequences." Jasmine, though shaken, spoke up. "I appreciate your apology, Lieutenant," she said. "But this is about more than one officer. This is about addressing the bias and abuse that people like me face every day." Carter nodded. "You're absolutely right, Mrs. Turner. I'll make it my priority to implement further training and accountability measures within the department. Thank you for bringing this to our attention." Marcus stepped forward, his tone resolute. "We'll be following up to ensure those changes happen," he said. "This isn't just about today. It's about creating a system where this kind of behavior is no longer tolerated." The lieutenant nodded, acknowledging Marcus's determination. As the situation finally de-escalated, Jasmine and Marcus stood together, surrounded by the support of the crowd. Many approached them to express solidarity and gratitude for standing up against injustice. "You handled that so well." One bystander said, "Thank you for speaking out." Marcus looked at Jasmine, his expression filled with pride. "She's the real strength here," he said. "She's the reason we're fighting." Jasmine smiled, her hand resting on her belly. "We're fighting for the future," she said softly. "For our child, and for every person who deserves better." As the situation calmed down, and Officer Daniels was escorted away, Marcus turned his attention to the gathered crowd. He knew this wasn't just about holding one officer accountable. It was an opportunity to address a much larger issue. His calm, yet commanding demeanor had already earned the respect of the bystanders. But what he revealed next took everyone by surprise. Standing beside Jasmine, Marcus addressed the group with clarity. "For those of you who may not know me, my name is Marcus Turner, and I'm a civil rights attorney specializing in cases just like this one. What happened here today isn't unique. It's part of a pattern that too many people face daily, and I've spent my career fighting to change that." The crowd murmured in astonishment. Many hadn't realized that Marcus's confidence and precise handling of the situation came from years of experience navigating cases of abuse and discrimination. His expertise wasn't just a product of his career. It was rooted in his passion for justice and equality. As Marcus finished speaking, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a notification. A reporter from a local news outlet had picked up a video of the incident, which had already started circulating online. The footage showed Daniels harassing Jasmine, Marcus confronting him, and the eventual arrival of Lieutenant Carter. The video quickly gained traction, sparking outrage and calls for accountability. Later that evening, the police department issued a formal statement addressing the incident. "We are deeply troubled by the actions of Officer Daniels, which do not align with the values of our department. A thorough investigation is underway, and immediate disciplinary measures have been taken." By the next morning, Daniels had been suspended without pay, and his past conduct was being reviewed. Several complaints from other community members came to light, revealing a troubling pattern of behavior that had gone unaddressed until now. As the story gained momentum, Jasmine's calm and composed response became a focal point of admiration. Her ability to stand firm in the face of blatant harassment resonated with many, particularly other women who had experienced similar situations. During an interview with a local news station, Jasmine reflected on the ordeal. "I wasn't just thinking about myself," she said. "I was thinking about my child and the kind of world I want them to grow up in. No one should have to endure this kind of treatment. And if standing up can help even one person, it's worth it." Her words struck a chord with viewers, many of whom reached out to express their support. Jasmine's courage became a symbol of resilience, inspiring others to speak out against injustice in their own lives. While the community rallied behind Jasmine, Marcus was already working to ensure the incident led to lasting change. He filed a formal civil rights complaint against Daniels and the police department, citing not only the harassment Jasmine endured, but also the systemic failures that allowed such behavior to persist. As the case gained traction, Marcus's reputation as a fierce advocate for justice grew. His legal expertise and unwavering determination made him a formidable opponent, and the case quickly drew the attention of national advocacy organizations. During a press conference, Marcus addressed the broader implications of the case. "This isn't just about one officer or one family," he said. "It's about addressing a system that allows bias and abuse to thrive. We're not just seeking justice for Jasmine. We're fighting for a future where no one has to face this kind of treatment." The ripple effect of the incident extended far beyond Marcus and Jasmine. Community members organized a town hall to discuss issues of racial profiling and law enforcement accountability. The event, which drew hundreds of attendees, featured testimonies from other residents who had experienced similar encounters with Daniels and other officers. Marcus and Jasmine were invited to speak, and their words left a lasting impression. "Change doesn't happen overnight," Marcus said, "but it starts with each of us standing up, speaking out, and refusing to accept injustice as normal." As Marcus and Jasmine returned home that evening, they felt a sense of pride and purpose. While the ordeal had been harrowing, it had also reinforced their commitment to fighting for justice, not just for themselves, but for their community and beyond. "We've started something important," Jasmine said, her hand resting on her belly. "I just hope it makes a difference." Marcus nodded, his expression resolute. "It will," he said, "because we won't stop until it does." In the weeks that followed the incident, the community of Greenfield Heights saw meaningful change unfold. The public outcry over Officer Daniels's actions, coupled with the decisive leadership of Marcus and Jasmine Turner, pushed local law enforcement to take accountability and implement reforms that had long been overdue. The investigation into Officer Daniels uncovered years of misconduct. Complaints from other community members revealed a troubling pattern of racial profiling and harassment that had previously been swept under the rug. This time, however, Daniels was not protected by the system he had exploited for so long. His suspension became permanent, and the police department terminated his employment, citing gross misconduct and violation of professional standards. Daniels' public reputation was shattered. The video of the incident, combined with Marcus's sharp critique of systemic bias, had gone viral, sparking outrage and solidarity far beyond Greenfield Heights. For the first time, Daniels was held accountable, not just in his career, but in the court of public opinion. The Greenfield Heights Police Department, facing immense pressure from the community, announced a series of reforms to address the issues highlighted by the incident. These included bias training. Officers were required to undergo mandatory training on implicit bias and cultural sensitivity, with a focus on recognizing and addressing discriminatory behavior. Accountability measures. A citizen oversight board was established to review complaints against officers, ensuring transparency and fairness in the handling of misconduct cases. Community engagement programs. The department initiated outreach efforts to rebuild trust with the community, including town halls, mentorship programs, and partnerships with local advocacy groups. Lieutenant Carter, who had intervened during the incident, was appointed to lead these efforts. "We cannot undo the mistakes of the past," she said during a press conference, but we can learn from them and commit to doing better. Change starts now. While the police department took steps to address its shortcomings, Marcus and Jasmine continued to advocate for justice and equality. Marcus used his legal expertise to file a civil rights lawsuit on behalf of Jasmine, not just to seek justice for their family, but to ensure lasting accountability within the system. The lawsuit brought national attention to the issue of racial profiling, drawing support from prominent civil rights organizations and community leaders. For Marcus, it wasn't just about winning a case. It was about creating a precedent that would protect others from facing similar harassment. Jasmine, meanwhile, became a powerful voice for change. During interviews and public forums, she shared her experience with honesty and grace, inspiring others to speak out against injustice. "This isn't just my story," she said during a televised appearance. "It's the story of so many people who have been silenced or dismissed. We all have a voice, and it's time we use it." The Turners' fight for justice resonated deeply with people across the country. What began as one family's response to an act of harassment grew into a larger movement, with communities rallying around the message of accountability, respect, and systemic reform. Social media campaigns like #JusticeForJasmine gained traction, sparking conversations about racial profiling and the need for equitable policing practices. People from all walks of life shared their own stories, creating a collective demand for change that couldn't be ignored. Amid the public attention and legal battles, Jasmine and Marcus welcomed their first child into the world, a healthy baby girl named Hope. For the Turners, hope symbolized the future they were fighting for. A world where their daughter would grow up without the fear of being judged or mistreated because of her skin color. As they held their newborn in their arms, Marcus and Jasmine reflected on the journey that had brought them here. "We've been through so much," Jasmine said softly, "but it feels like we're building something bigger than ourselves." Marcus nodded, his expression filled with determination. "This is just the beginning," he said, "for her and for everyone else." The Turners' courage and leadership left a lasting impact on Greenfield Heights. The reforms implemented within the police department became a model for other communities, demonstrating that change was possible when people stood together and demanded accountability. For the residents of Greenfield Heights, the incident served as a reminder of the power of unity. Neighbors who had once felt disconnected came together to support one another, fostering a sense of solidarity and shared purpose. At a community event held to celebrate the progress that had been made, Marcus and Jasmine were honored for their advocacy and resilience. Standing before a crowd of friends, neighbors, and supporters, Marcus delivered a speech that left a profound impression. "This isn't just about our family," he said. "It's about creating a future where every person is treated with dignity and respect. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with each of us, standing up, speaking out, and refusing to accept injustice as normal." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing the hope and determination that had defined the Turners' journey. For Marcus and Jasmine, the incident was a painful chapter, but it was also a turning point. It reinforced their belief in the importance of fighting for what's right and reminded them of the strength they could find in one another. Their story became a symbol of resilience, courage, and the power of love to overcome even the greatest challenges. For their daughter, Hope, it was a legacy that she would carry with her, a reminder that her parents had stood tall in the face of adversity and fought to create a better world. The story of Marcus and Jasmine Turner is a testament to the power of resilience, love, and justice. What began as a traumatic encounter with a racist officer transformed into a fight for accountability and lasting change. Through their courage and determination, Marcus and Jasmine not only stood up for themselves, but also inspired a community and a nation to confront systemic bias and demand fairness for all. Their journey reminds us that standing up against injustice, no matter how difficult, can create ripples of change. Marcus and Jasmine proved that by working together and refusing to back down, we can hold those in power accountable and pave the way for a brighter future. What would you do if faced with a similar situation? Have you ever witnessed or experienced injustice, and how did you respond? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales of resilience and justice. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with another story that challenges perspectives and ignites change. Until then, remember, standing up for what's right is how we shape a better tomorrow.